Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, ambassadors, high commissioners accredited to the Republic of Ghana, members of the Diplomatic Corps, members of Trademark Africa, distinguished trade state institutions of the Republic of Ghana, members of the private sector, AfCFTA directors and Secretary General senior advisors, distinguished colleagues, invited guests, all protocol observed. The program for the public lecture of His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, is as follows. His Excellency H.E Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AfCFTA Secretariat, will deliver the opening remarks. Then we will have a public lecture by His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn on the theme African Continental Free Trade Area as a catalyst for Agenda 2063, seizing opportunities in a changing world. After the public lecture, the speaker will respond to some questions from the audience. The questions and answer session will be followed by a signing ceremony between the AfCFTA Secretariat and Trademark Africa. After that, we'll follow by a family photo with the guests of honor. Without further ado, it is my privilege now to invite to the speaking lectern His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat, for his opening remark. And I would like you to welcome him on the stage.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Your Excellency, Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, Chairman of the Board of Trademark Africa and former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. Accompanied by David Beer, the Chief Executive Officer of Trademark Africa, senior members of the executive team of Trademark Africa, Your Excellencies, High Commissioners, Ambassadors, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the Chief of Staff of the AfCFTA Secretariat, directors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor for us, Excellencies, to welcome you to the AfCFTA Secretariat. We are privileged to have you deliver this lecture today. As you know, Excellency, the partnership between the AfCFTA Secretariat and Trademark Africa is now on its fourth year of implementation. It is a strong partnership and collaboration that we are very, very proud of. Today we will sign the MOU, and as we sign the MOU, we do so in a rapidly changing geopolitical context, a rapidly changing geoeconomic context that challenges the continent of Africa to reflect on how we intend to navigate what is going to be an extremely difficult next 4 years. Last year, Excellency Prime Minister, I was invited to speak at the annual event of the International Bankers Association. And I was asked to opine on what happens in the state of the world if in the United States at that time, there is a change of government. I said this in July last year, and I want to quote myself at the risk of sounding as if I lack humility. I said that if there is a return of the Trump administration, all of us must buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. What I did not anticipate is the intensiveness of economic nationalism, geopolitical threats, weaponization of trade policy, as I noted yesterday at UNECA, economic nationalism and investment nationalism, and then, above all, the attempt to weaken the multilateral trading system and the rules that underpin the fairness of the multilateral trading system. This has a very, very serious impact on the African continent. It means that AGOA, which has existed since the year 2020, enabling market access into the United States, the likelihood is that there will be a reconfiguration of AGOA. Nobody knows the final outcome of that reconfiguration. But what we do know is that we're entering an era of me first, others last. And that is a very serious question that the continent of Africa must confront. The good news is that we have the AfCFTA. The legal foundation is very strong. The political commitment certainly is unprecedented, with 49 countries that have ratified the agreement establishing the AfCFTA. This presents us with an opportunity to develop a domestic market, an inward-looking domestic market that focuses on building supply chains in Africa, building our own resilience, and continuing to develop the AfCFTA market. This is exemplified by a recent report by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. Very positive report last week that stated that since the establishment of the AfCFTA, Nigeria has diversified their export markets such that the largest export region for Nigeria no longer is Europe, the US, other parts of the world. It is now Africa. This certainly underscores the relevance of the AfCFTA in the context that I am describing, that continues to be rapidly changing. And so this positive example of how Nigeria was able to reconfigure her own export market towards the African continent certainly is a positive step in the right direction for all of AfCFTA state parties. Let me conclude, Excellency, by briefly setting out some of our successes based on our collaboration, the implementation of the MOU that we signed in 2021. We now have established a private sector unit that is fully operational, that will support small, medium enterprises, particularly those that are led by women. Second, we will have a focus on a simplified trade regime to enable transit of goods across borders efficiently and affordably. We also have had a focus on agriculture, fisheries products in particular. And finally, we have achieved and recorded success on infrastructure development and various interventions that were made to boost customs systems at the border. And so I want to once again stress the importance of this partnership to us as the AfCFTA Secretariat. And we look forward, Excellency Prime Minister, to working with you, with the CEO, Mr. David Beer, as well as the board, to ensure that we strengthen this collaboration and this partnership so that together we can develop tools to navigate in the interests of the African continent, to navigate the storms that are coming. This partnership, which will be symbolized by the MOU that we will sign, of course would not have been able to record as much progress as we did without the support of our friends, the British government, and others. And so I conclude, Excellency Prime Minister, by once again welcoming you and your delegation to the AfCFTA Secretariat. We are honored to have you here. We have a tradition of hosting heads of states, heads of government, and certainly today this is consistent with that tradition and that practice of welcoming our heads of states so that they see where we are functioning from. So I want to thank you very much, Excellency, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your visionary statement. Excellencies, Chief of Staff of the AfCFTA Secretariat, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The guest of honor is an African senior political leader with expertise and experience on both national and continental stage. He was appointed board chair of Trademark Africa on the 5th of September 2024. His tenure as Prime Minister of Ethiopia from 2012 and 2018 was marked by a visionary approach to economic and diplomatic engagement, under which Ethiopia saw sustained double-digit economic growth. His experience is fostering trade agreement and promoting economic integration during his tenure as chairperson of the African Union is particularly remarkable. Our honorable guest holds a master's degree in water and environmental engineering from Tampere University of Technology in Finland, and a second master's degree in organizational leadership from Azusa Pacific University in California, USA. He previously held the position of Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Social Affairs and Government, Chief Whip Minister. He also served as governor of the Southern Regional State of Ethiopia for 6 years. He currently serves on several boards on international organizations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, kindly join me in welcoming the former Prime Minister of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, His Excellency Hailemariam Desalegn, for his lecture.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Your Excellency, Secretary General, Excellencies, High Commissioners, Ambassadors, members of the leadership of AfCFTA, and also the staff and invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor, Your Excellency, to invite me to give you a very short lecture on, let me say lecture, I don't know, but speech on some of the pertinent issues that we need to look into, especially with the current geopolitical situations and the global environment, we need to strategize how Africa should be self-sustaining and standing by its own foot so that we can navigate through these challenges we face currently. So, Your Excellency, thank you very much for this opportunity. Trademark Africa, I joined simply because trade is the most important tool to integrate our continent. And we are lagging behind other continents in terms of economic and social integration, let alone political integration, which is a byproduct of this kind of integration that we have to foster. But nonetheless, we shouldn't lose hope. We should continue striving to integrate our continent. And we have to begin with trade as the most important tool. Our leaders in the history of the African unity and as well as African Union, a landmark decision has taken. That is the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which most people has not, or are not convinced that Africans can do that, given our history and our background. But nonetheless, we did it. And 49 countries has ratified this agreement, which shows it is a very important agreement if we properly implement this agreement. So Trademark Africa is here to support the implementation of this agreement in our continent. And we are very much committed to do that. That's why myself and my team are visiting the AfCFTA headquarters, even though we did have a number of bilaterals with His Excellency, the Secretary General. So 5 years ago, Africa made history. When the African Continental Free Trade Area was launched, it carried the hopes of 1.2 billion people coming together as one market, harnessing a 3 trillion economy and a vision of an African trading with itself on its own terms, which is very important. Even our infrastructure earlier was built to trade with our colonial masters, has never been within Africa. So I think that deficit is making us even now very much challenging to trade with each other. But we have to come up with a solution as quickly as and as fast as possible. The past 5 years have seen a number of challenges. One of them was COVID-19, we all know, which hugely disrupted the global supply chains, leading to a contraction in global trade in 2020 of over 5%. While trade rebounded, geopolitical tensions combined with a retreat from free trade have loomed large, and with global trade now undergoing the slowest growth in 5 decades outside global recessions. As these uncertainties unfold, they create a complex new landscape where Africa must carefully navigate to advance its economic interests. This lecture will examine the achievements of AfCFTA, Euro scorecard, the financial and internal structure issues that are hindering Africa's accession to the center of global trade, and what the future may hold for our continent. When the AfCFTA was launched in 2020, it promised to break down borders, boost African trade, and unlock economic growth across the continent. And the AfCFTA is Africa's most successful Agenda 2063, because I say this, I was chair of the African Union when we drafted the Agenda 2063. So I was at the center of it, and I know how much challenging it was. And of all the major initiatives under Agenda 2063, it stands out as the most advanced in implementation, according to the African Union Commission and other NEPADs, 2022 biennial report. The political commitment of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and to market integration is strong. Now 49 ratifications are no small feat and tell us that Africa believes in this vision. This we have to underline. Trade under AfCFTA has begun, and business across the continent are starting to explore new opportunities, but challenges abound. And the early signs of trade growth are encouraging. Between 2017 and 2023, intra-African trade grew by 27%, from 140 billion to 190 billion. It is now likely to pass the 200 billion mark for the first time ever. This growth matters. It means more African goods are being exchanged within our continent, more local businesses are benefiting, and the trade integration is taking shape. Even on a global scale, the WTO projects that Africa's exports will grow faster than any other region, like 5.3% in 2024, up to 3.1 in up from 3.1 in 2023. Imports are also expected to increase by over 4%, a sign of positive economic activity on the continent. These are the goods which I'm speaking. These are the positive things we have to capitalize on. Otherwise, doom's thinking will come in and will frustrate. And the work of so many people here is underpinned that I note the publishing of the e-tariff book, which marks access to tariffs and the rules of origin more accessible through digitization. On a trade in goods, member states have made commitments to eliminate tariffs on 97 of the tariff lines over a specified period. Your Excellency, when I report this, it might seem easy, but the negotiations that has taken place were so deep and sometimes frustrating. So I think we have to recognize that, and the success depends on how this result has been achieved and how much energy has been invested in it. Again, so far 43 countries representing 78% of the AU's membership have submitted their tariff offers, and 92% of the tariff lines rules of origin have been agreed upon. An online NTB elimination mechanism, a Pan-African payment and settlement system, and a trade observatory have been established. And the protocol on women and youth in trade was adopted in 2024 as a legally binding instrument of AfCFTA, a powerful statement of African commitment to inclusive trade. These are concrete and significant gains, and I congratulate you for your part in these achievements. Now let me go on challenge, because that's also important. And yet, intra-Africa trade still stands at just 15% of total African trade. Compare that to 50% in Asia. And from 2017 to 2023, Africa's total merchandise exports surged by 200%, while intra-African trade increased by only 27%. I want you to think about this. While intra-African trade is improving, the growth in trade is still far more a question of external market than between our countries. While there is nothing wrong with taking the opportunities where they come, this shows that something is hindering opportunities on and within the continent. For decades, Africa has supplied the world with gold, oil, coffee, cocoa, from our foreparents. until now, and a host of other raw materials, some of which it then re-imports back as finished products as a much higher price. This is a structural trap, keeping us at the lower end of the global value chains. Yet our own consumption trends should serve as a wake-up call that trade agreements alone are not enough. We drink imported processed coffee. My country is a coffee-growing country. But when you go to the hotels in Addis Ababa, you drink something which comes back processed. And so it's a shame why we are not processing those coffee, at least for our drinking. If not because of the phytosanitary issues, if we are not able to export, we can at least process it and drink it, because 60% of Ethiopians drink coffee. So this is a big question. For decades, Africa has supplied, according to a recent International Trade Center report, the biggest opportunity for intra-African trade expansion lies in industrial products, like fertilizers, minerals, beauty products, chemicals, and other manufactured goods. This should be our starting point. I asked Dangote, because Dangote produces fertilizer, you know that. But his fertilizer goes to United States, UK, and Canada than African countries. Can you imagine? Let us be clear, we are not short of ambition. Our leaders, businesses, and people want to trade. The energy is there. The ideas are there. The opportunity is immense. But across our continent, businesses are still face complex regulations, logistics hurdles, poor infrastructure, and overlapping trade blocks, each with their own interests and rules. And so instead of one big market, we have fragmented pieces, even now, which are not linked to each other. Let me pick three of these issues. The first one is the infrastructure challenge. How can we talk about free trade when goods take weeks or months to move across the continent, making it more expensive to transport goods in Africa than shipping to Europe and Asia, often due to underdeveloped road networks and inefficient logistics? According to UN's UNCTAD, for example, poor connectivity has meant road transport costs accounts for about 29% of the price of goods traded within Africa, compared to just 7% for those traded outside the continent. The latest World Bank Container Port Performance Index indicates that the sub-Saharan Africa ports lag behind their global counterparts, ranking among the lowest in efficiency and overall performance. Africa's trade infrastructure gap is estimated at between 130 to 170 billion annually, according to the African Development Bank, showing the pace of developing major trade and transport corridors. All this suggests that the region needs substantial improvements in investment, coordination, and efficiency of its trade infrastructure, including, in particular, digital infrastructure. The second one is the application of rules. A complex body of rules and regulations is necessary for effective trade. When I say complex but simple, I think that's clear. But the nature of these rules and the way that they are implemented makes a major difference in how fast and well trade can flow. The administration of regulations can unfortunately be an opportunity to throw up bureaucratic roadblocks or to slow down implementation to protect national industries. For example, the Daily Nation in Kenya recently shared the experience of a tea exporter under the GTI. She explained how she had to wait 5 months to get her products quality approved for export to Ghana. This is despite Kenya and Ghana being amongst the founder members of GTI. She went through 48 steps, 21 institutions, and 38 documents. If you were exporting coffee from Uganda, you would need to go through 36 steps involving 15 institutions, 49 documents, and a waiting period that can range from 16 to 49 days. Exporting the same product from Kenya would take 59 steps, 23 institutions, 40 documents, and a wait up to 31 days. These are not exceptions, they are the norms. There is now a sense of urgency to tackle this. Preferential access to developed markets is not a given, and exporters need to be able to adapt rapidly both to the closure of markets and to meet the requirements as new ones open up. Meanwhile, when African countries negotiate as individual countries, we lose leverage. This is why the AfCFTA is so important for as a united bloc in giving us a stronger voice. Thirdly, the finance challenge. We have heard many times about the difficulties of access to finance for production. I will not talk about that today, but rather address a different yet fundamental problem in this sector. Cross-border trade is about goods, services, and currency. Today, Africa's financial system do not allow for the convertibility and ease of cross-border payments, which would encourage trade to flow. If a Kenyan business wants to buy goods from Ghana, they will often need first to convert money into, say, US dollars, and only then into Ghanaian cedi. Given that Kenyan shilling and cedi are not major globally traded currencies, this adds costs. It's simple and known, but delays and risks. If we truly want an integrated, self-sufficient trade system, then we must take control of how trade is financed, how payments are made, and how trade finance rules are shaped. This is why regional payment systems that allow businesses to trade directly in their own currencies are essential to overcome regulatory hurdles. The good news is that progress is being made. The Pan-African Payment and Settlement System has linked quite a few central banks already. The East African Payment System has succeeded in linking partner states, real-time gross settlement systems, and a SWIFT messaging network. Operational in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and the East African bloc, it is improving the efficiency of interbank fund transfers. COMESA's payment system has eliminated the need for confirmed letters of credit and associated costs, as central banks guarantee payments through pre-funding commercial bank accounts held with the central bank. The next step is to allow those at the bottom end of the pyramid to access cost-effective and appropriate solutions to cross-border payments. So now, the future. Agenda 2063, Africa must lead its own transformation. That's a basic. That's a bottom line. We have to lead our own transformation, and we have to take this seriously. So where do we go from here? I remember clearly when we stood in Ethiopia some years ago and launched Agenda 2063, it was a bold declaration and a vision of an integrated, self-sufficient Africa, trading with itself, producing for itself, and shaping its own economic future. At that time, many doubted us. They said our ambitions were too big, that the barriers were too many. And yet, just a few years later, we signed the AfCFTA, a commitment to something greater than national economies. It was Africa showing confidence in its young population, vast agricultural opportunity, and untapped mineral, especially critical mineral resources across the continent. That confidence is not misplaced. Agenda 2063 lays out Africa's vision for economic transformation. AfCFTA is a major pillar in making this vision a reality. We have seen the commitment of our leaders as they have signed the agreement, as I said, meaning political will and action is strong. Now the real work begins. I am certain everyone here agrees with me that the trade agreements alone will not create jobs or build industries. That, as I have set out above, also requires the roads, ports, financial systems that connect businesses and people. Without this, progress will be uneven and implementation slow. We must also believe and champion a Pan-African vision, because sometimes we know national interests still override continental priorities. Why shouldn't we give some sovereignty, given out? Otherwise, we can't make it happen. So our leaders has to think about this very much. So to create lift-off for intra-African trade, we must invest in transport corridors like LAPSET in East Africa, you know that, Abidjan, Lagos in West Africa, and the North-South corridor in South Africa. Leverage public-private partnership to finance infrastructure, modernize customs, and streamline trade facilitation, and double down on digitizing trade processes to cut delays and inefficiencies at borders. A globally competitive Africa will come from what we produce, what we buy, and where we invest. But when we talk of building and buying African, it's not about exhausting consumers to be patriotic. It is about implementing effective trade and industrial policies that we build the quality, productivity capacity, and regional value chains that will give consumers a compelling reason to buy African products. I was telling to my friends, when some of them come and try to emulate some of the very little successes we had in Ethiopia, I say this will not happen by wishful thinking. You should have a policy, proper policy, and a delivery mindset. Otherwise, you can't do it. Many has good policies. They put in the shelf, and thus this will cover those policies, because without political will and action, this will not happen. It will not happen at all. AfCFTA cannot push to the extent possible if there is no political action. Not only will, there is a will, there is agreement signed, but political action is much more important. For the next 5 years, my organization, let me say TMA, will continue to build international, continental, regional, and national partnerships with the public and private sector to build an inclusive trade environment for Africa, focusing on strengthening policies and reducing trade barriers in goods, services, and investments, supporting the quality and value of traded goods so that businesses access markets, putting in place the digital systems necessary for efficient trade, investing in trade corridors and infrastructure, and ensuring that intra-Africa trade benefits women, youth, and MSMEs. As we are coming to the end, let me acknowledge that the challenge ahead is tough but exciting. But I think we all agree that making AfCFTA work is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape Africa's future. It's as important as that. So I call upon each and every one of you to support this institution and its works, because it is the only African decision that has been so successful so far, given with all our shortcomings. So let me say, let us not waste it. Let's use this opportunity. With those many remarks, happy 5th birthday for AfCFTA, and thank you for your kind attention, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.